Hi, everyone. Welcome to our series on the moon through the astrological signs of the zodiac. We have reached the archetype of Leo, which is the fifth house. And so we're going to be talking about how the moon essentially is experienced with this archetype of Leo, and if you have a moon in the fifth house, as I do. So I'm going to be just talking you through this sign, and my colleagues will be joining in and giving us their perspectives. So, moon in the fifth house. So essentially, when we've reached the fifth house, the sign of Leo, we've reached a fixed archetype, and we've it's a fire house. So the moon in the fifth house essentially relates to an egocentric image that is all about creative self-actualization. And this a person that has this archetype is seeking to kind of take control of their destiny. It's a sense that they have a special purpose to achieve. And it's highlighted by the fact that Leo is it's the last subjective archetype that we have in the zodiac. Because you start off from Aries through to Leo, you have the kind of me signature. And with Leo, it's like the pyramid signature, where it's right at the top of the pyramid is where an individual kind of the focus is on that particular person's desires, let's say. So it's very much about me, myself, and I. That's a reason why Leo gets the kind of reputation as being narcissistic. But it needs to be narcissistic because it has to put itself first, because it's wanting to achieve something. There's a goal to do, there's a mission to be on. And with this archetype, we then get people that can be very focused. They can be self-centered, not in a negative way, but it can happen if the energy gets distorted. But it's very much about creativity and play. And it's that innocence of wanting to experience life from a very joyful way. So it becomes heart-centered. And yeah, so for me, having a moon in the fifth house, I used to be like, that's not me. I'm not, well, I'm going to use the word narcissistic or self-centered. But I've realized that, yes, I have something that's about me that's very strong-willed. And that's because the fifth house is related to that desire to get something done. And we know that the Leo archetype is ruled by the sun. And what does the sun do? It shines its light, it illuminates, and it gives energy. And that's why anyone that has a moon in the fifth house or the moon in the sign of Leo will have that feeling that they're here to achieve something. There's a special destiny, there's a specialness to it. And yeah, guys, I just want to get your opinion on how you feel the fifth house archetype, especially with the moon, can manifest for people. And I don't like picking on people, so whoever wants to chime in, please do. I think I have to pick.
I
Joe?
yeah.
Oh, you
Um,
you went there.
like my moon isn't in the fifth house, but my sun is in the fourth house, and Leo is my next door neighbor.
Yes, that it is.
I like that. That's perfect. You really do know your neighbors often, right?
Good fences make good neighbors, they say. But for me, what the way it speaks to me about Leo is kind of like what you're saying. From the outside, Leos appear to be a certain way to other people. There's such a
Mm,
strength in the way they express themselves. And every sign has its characteristics like that seem different to who we are. But for me, it's a real contrast in a way because everyone I knew born after me has their birthday the next month. Seems right. It appears to me so much more outward going. And there's me, little Cancer, right? Not sure whether to come out of the shell and scuttle across the sand if it's going to be safe. Oh no. I'll leave that to the Leos. I'll come back. Like I'm not always like that, and Leo isn't always, let's go get it. But there's quite a contrast, and I'm not sure how other people relate with the way you see yourself in your sign, what you identify with. But for me, it's lovely. They go out and do that, but I kind of wish that I was doing it too sometimes.
Because they look like
Yeah.
they're having so much fun.
That why?
From inside, it's like I imagine I'm in this little conch, right? So I just got that narrow little bit.
Oh my gosh, look at your hearts.
I know.
I can't even go as far as having a good time. I might like to have a good time like that, but it's just a bit too overwhelming and a bit too much. I'll stay inside my shell and try. It's like Leo are the Netflix of my world.
But Joe, you won't have realized just there when you did that symbol, hearts flew out onto the screen. Yes. How how
Oh my God.
perfect. How
Yes.
perfect. You know, where that we're talking about the moon, right? So Cancer being the ruler of the moon, essentially, you know, it's moving towards what's heart-centered. It's moving towards what brings it joy. So right now, all you need is that little kind of coming out of your shell. And
Well, and
yeah, play.
Leo's,
Yeah.
planet ruler. My sun is in Cancer, so that's where my
Mhm.
fire is, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
I
foundation.
have, oh, sorry. I have a story. This just happened over the course of 2 days. I have a friend who um has this placement, and there were things, this is so fitting for this archetype. There were things going on within the community where there was, and bear with me, where there was like intellectual theft, and she found out about it, and she has this moon placement, and she did her due diligence and nothing was being done. And of course, this was like in a spiritual kind of community, and someone said something to her about being low vibrational, and she was like, no, she had this dignity, which I think of a Leo moon or a fifth house moon. And she said, no, you can be spiritual and you can still roar and show your teeth. And to me, that encompasses this archetype right here, is being dignified, being in integrity, and having the courage to have self-love whenever maybe others are trying to squash that down or aren't wanting to see or acknowledge, right? Because Leo is about acknowledgement, and that was her having the courage to express herself in this way, but also to mirror, I would say, um having self-love, that I'm not going to be gaslit about something. I'm going to still have the courage to say this. And I just thought her words were really pertinent to exactly what we're speaking about with that placement, which is, no, I can still roar and show my teeth and be in self-love. So she was expressing this like self-dignity, I feel like.
Nice. Yeah. No, I totally see what you mean by that. Deva, anything to add in terms of just Leo as an archetype, especially when related to the moon?
Oh, what you guys shared to me is really, really right. The passion of self-actualization and really not suppressing that. If you there's something here that is inside me that's special, and I'm gonna do for myself what I need to do to nurture that, so I can bring that out into the world, so I can manifest it. And to me, the purest expression of Leo is really that joy of yourself and others manifesting everything that they are, the joy of self actualization and releasing that judgment that you need to be at times self focused in order to do that, and that there's no shame in that. That you got to do at times what you need to do for yourself for that joy and that passion to be manifested. Because from my
Yeah.
point of view, that's really what Leo wants. It wants manifestation.
Yeah. Sue has just added a little comment, Deva, that the sun is literally shining on you. When you've just spoken, the sun is it's beautiful. If you're in the spotlight there. Yeah.
Is it okay to add a little scene from a movie that always makes me think of
Please
Leo?
do.
It's
Yes.
from, it's from Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg, and she's not a nun, but they bring her in there for hiding purposes because she was a witness to a murder, and she's a lounge singer, and they bring her into a convent so she can hide, and she meets up with Sister Mary Roberts, and she comes in and she has like a little confession. It's so cute. She comes in. Now, I've always felt that there's something very special inside me. Do you think that that's pride? And she says, oh no. Because she's a lounge singer. She says, you sing it with an attitude. You sing that A with an attitude. You bring it out into the world. I just always thought of that as the how Leo can, when it comes out like a lion, how it can really bring that, it can really roar in the most, it can really roar in that way, in terms of there's no shame in this.
And it's self-confidence, right? It's
Yeah.
having that confidence that I'm going to do this because it brings me joy, and it will essentially bring others joy. Yeah. Kristin, did you add something?
Well, I mean, I would just add, because what everyone said, really nailed it. But I mean, of course, purpose-driven life is paramount, but also that at least everybody that I know who has a prominent Leo energy in their chart, fifth house, especially the moon in Leo, is they really have to be in love with what they do. Like you love books, right, Rob? And you work around them, you love everything about them, and it just nurtures you. That's the moon, to be surrounded by all of that wisdom, and but to be in love with what you do, and to not imagine. It's like someone saying, I can't believe I get paid for what I do. Because I love it that much. It's just a gift. So I feel like that's a very important thing for someone with moon in the fifth or moon in Leo, to be in love, to have that reason for getting up, for their heart is totally into what they're doing. And this work, of course, as well, Rob. In addition, you are in love with this work, are you not? To have a love affair with what you do, whether it's your music or your astrology or the work you're doing in the world. It's a stagey kind of place for the moon, to be on stage, to be performing, to be a light for others, to be a guide for others. And there's nothing that means more for a Leo moon than to be able to shine the light, help others shine their light, to shine a light on others' gifts also. That's something very gifted about a Leo moon. They really know how to illuminate what is special about others as well. When it's evolved, that happens.
Yes. And you've something just to share with the audience, just to give you an example. Being a fifth house moon, my moon is in Capricorn. And Kristin, you just mentioned the fact that I do love my job, but this job has come later on into me in life through other professions and careers.
Yeah.
But it's through this job. Previously, it was like, oh, I have to go to work. This doesn't feel like work because it's joy. It's because I'm sharing stuff with other people and helping them, pick books and to help them grow. But yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head there, where it is that love affair. And even this work is something I absolutely love. And it's not work for me. This is fun. This is fun and growth combined in one. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. So just moving on, we're going to actually now just mention each of our own power animals and an animal friend that connects to Leo. So I'm just going to start you off, and I actually came up with two. The first one is a mythological creature, but to me it's very real. It's the phoenix bird. And essentially it's because of what the phoenix bird represents. Rising from the ashes, and then, it basically goes into flames and then rises up again. So it's that kind of life and death and rebirth, which I absolutely love. And if you think of the phoenix bird, it's the fire, and Leo is all about fire. And it's about, growth through that fire as well. And an interesting fact is I have a phoenix bird tattoo on my wrist. And it was after I got this tattoo that astrology came into my life. So it's interesting how dots do connect eventually, if things don't make sense at the time. But so that's an animal that I really resonate with, and it just means a lot to me. And the second one I want to quickly mention is I do actually love lions, and I know it's linked to Leo, and it must be to do with my moon in the fifth house. I've always wanted a lion cub, just a little lion cub, just to, I'm actually dressed like a little lion cub right now, but just always wanted a little bit lion cub. That's why I just love that whole energy to do with the lion. It's just the power, the regalness it represents, and it's just mesmerizing. I look at pictures of lions, in the safari and stuff, and I'm like, wow, this still just blows me away. Just the power and the presence that they have. It just gives me a lot of confidence in standing up into my own power. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask Jordan to speak about her power animal.
Well, we all know I love possums, but I do another animal that I'm really connected with and I've loved since I was little. The first time I saw them are the African painted dogs. And I actually know a bit about them, and it makes sense why I feel so connected to them. So they live in matriarchal societies out in the sub-Saharan deserts, and they each have these beautiful coats, and each one is very unique and distinguished. They all know each other. And something that I love about them is that it really reflects the epitome of matriarchy is everyone in the pack, there's no hierarchy within taking care of children. The daddies take care of the cubs, the mamas take care of the cubs, and everyone works together. And they all have like specific calls to each other. It's almost as if they can like call out each other's names. They are very vocal animals. And then they also are really great at problem solving and troubleshooting, and they work together as a pack to do that. Whether that's like if they're being alerted that there's poachers or things are happening or going on, I don't know. I love them so much. They're so they remind me of everything that I wish that humanity was right now, if that makes sense. So, and they're very cool to look at and to listen to. If you ever have them at a zoo or something, I would really go and have that experience of listening to them and watching them. They are also known for not arguing or having scuffles with each other. Like that's very diplomatic as a pack. There's not a lot, within some packs, there can be a lot of like arguments and then tearing at each other sometimes or having scuffles. They're not known to really do that with each other because they're so good at problem solving. And so I find them fascinating. So
Was it what, African painted dogs, did you say?
yeah.
Right.
And they're
I'm gonna
gorgeous.
have a look.
They have bat ears and they almost sound like they do echolocation, the way that they call to each other. And so, yeah, and each one has a different marking. So it reminds me very Leo Aquarius, very unique, so.
Nice. Joe?
Oh, well, thank you. I've been thinking about jaguar for a while on it's on my mug, my teacup. And I was thinking about it a bit more earlier this evening and wondering, well, jaguar, I work with this as an power animal, as an energy, as an archetype in a lot of my work, in a lot of my shamanic work. But I thought, actually, I'm probably a bit less jaguar-esque, and it's more the animal that I really relate to is your ordinary cat. It's a bit less, well, it's smaller. I'm not going to say it's a bit less because my cat's watching me just now, and I'm sure she understands. Thinking about what I just, you say something, I say something, I think about it, I think, oh my goodness me, how revealing was that? Did anyone notice? But thinking about what I was saying about the peering, I try to do this without the hearts, about peering out from inside my conch shell. It's like being a cat because part of me loves to be adventurous and outside. And then there's also nothing that I like more than just curling up somewhere warm and being in at home. And it's like I'm nowhere near the cusp between Cancer and Leo at all, but I have this sense of I have to go out. I need to being adventurous wakes my soul up. I just feel full of life. But then I come back in, I need to withdraw and to process. And so I suppose cats, or my idea of cats. Yeah. Her job, she
Yeah.
should be up on my lap right now, but she's not. She's being adventurous, synced in terms of being in the warm place and being in the adventurous place. But I think that's what I would say. It's some days
Nice.
I'm out there as the jaguar, and I'm in here as the little kitty cat.
But do you know what? That sounds perfect though, because it's like you just said, we need the duality. You know, being out in adventures. Right now, Joe, you look like you're sitting in the most coziest place
Yeah.
Oh,
ever.
it's
Like literally, like yeah,
got my floor,
warming my heart.
got my
Yeah,
special.
no, beautiful.
As I,
Right.
I want to embrace all of them. It's like I feel like I have an affinity with all of creation sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's what Jordan just mentioned, you know, how the African painted dogs, they represent how humanity needs to move towards. Essentially, that's the goal, right? Especially if we're wanting to welcome back the matriarchal energies and influences. That's the way we should be heading. Yeah, beautiful. Deva, what is your power animal?
Well, aside from the bunny or from the rabbit,
Yes.
who's overcoming fears, which is for me a big focus. I also draw a lot of strength from the horse and from watching how free they are and watching how dignified they are. With some horses, they don't allow themselves to be subdued, or they don't allow themselves to be suppressed, and maximum willpower, maximum freedom in how they run, and how they and even when they are partnered with a person, or when somebody is riding on them, from the stories I've heard, they have to be in unity. There needs to be a partnership between the rider, and so that they don't feel that they're being in any way suppressed or broken. And to me, it really speaks to one who won't allow themselves to be broken in any way, and the freedom in moving in that way. And when partnered, how there's a unity, or how there's a combination of wills. And a beautiful book that I read is Celtic and the mythic way, and it's really beautiful in my point of view, because it's about how equines or horses are also used for those who have experienced a heavy degree of trauma, and it helps with their own emotional healing. And the people that worked partnered specific people with specific horses, because they knew their temperaments and they were able to see how they would partner. And I drew a lot of strength from that, or I drew a lot of inspiration from that, in seeing how you can maintain that, or you can maintain an essentially free and undominated spirit, and partner in a way to where there's a healing, or that in a way two wills become one.
Yeah.
And so I found a lot of I found a lot of inspiration in that, and I draw a lot of strength in that.
Beautiful. There is something in animal healing. There is something a lot deeper and probably not as much recognized as it can be. You're absolutely right. You know, I remember a time when I was heartbroken and I'd gone to a friend's house. I just sat down and her cat, who used to be quite standoffish from me, sat on my lap, put its paws on my chest and just purred. And I remember just crying.
Oh.
But I could feel it was like the hug I needed, not from it. It was just the energy I could feel coming off from this animal.
Mm.
And it was loving. It was pure love in its essence. And it's a memory I have. It was a lot 25 years ago now, but it was so powerful. So yeah, I do totally resonate with that. So thank you, Deva.
Oh, you're welcome. I felt the same way when I went through a very difficult experience, and then I went to horseback riding, and I just watched and I admired this horse just flying. And it really, it affected me in the same way. I felt a part of myself just feeling embraced and feeling very, very much healing from that.
Yeah. And also somebody recognizing the pain that you're kind of going through, which is beautiful as well. Yeah. Thank you. Kristin,
Well, mine will never change.
of course.
I have a double stallion. We gotta have another stallion here, another horse. I was trying to remember this exact quote when I included in my forecast. Maybe Joe, you can help me remember which sign I wrote this for. But in speaking about the horse, it was something to the effect of be gentle and the horse will show you your heart. Be kind and the horse will show you theirs. And so we know that the equine therapy is really a beautiful way to work with trauma, emotional trauma. And it's true for these horse whisperer types that, it's magical to watch them because it truly is an emotional connection. Animals, as we always say, are pure emotion. So they're really responding to your emotion. And so I love that. And of course, I agree with Deva. I think I've had many lifetimes, one with my horse without a saddle. And with the natural trine, actually, half horse, half human. Deva and I are both Sages. So we really can relate to the wild spirit of the horse and the gypsy spirit, the free spirit, and wanting absolute freedom to roam, to experience, to gallop fast toward a horizon. And with the natural trine to Leo, the fire sign needs freedom to create, needs freedom of expression, nothing limiting what it is that they've come here to do and to experience. And all fire signs come in with a special sense of destiny. If you have planets in fire houses, planets in fire signs, the lead point being Leo for sure. There's just a little bit extra fire in that purpose-driven life, but it just feels like a big kind of stage energy when I think of Leo. But they need that to pull from that the natural trine to Sag and to Aries. So yes, the stallion is. I'm one with the stallion. What can I say? It is a powerful feeling to be on that horse, even in a meditation. So
Yes. No, that's beautiful. No, thank you guys for that. And hopefully the audience watching will be able to relate to your own power animal and what brings you kind of joy and just brings you that essence back to yourself, an essence of just fun as well. Yeah. So just moving on, we are now going to be talking think we've got into okay, so strengths and vulnerabilities. I know we've spoken about this a little bit in terms of the Leo archetype, but essentially, if you had to kind of sum up what nurtures and empowers, what's the strength of a Leo and what's the vulnerability? What would you say? Like, for example, I feel, well, a strength is natural self-confidence. A Leo moon energy is confidence in oneself and being able to, follow their heart and like you said, Kristin, freedom of expression. And I feel a vulnerability can be, and Joe mentioned this earlier, how people can think a Leo is narcissistic, is self-absorbed, doesn't think of others possibly, in that kind of distorted energy that can come out from a Leo moon. Anything else to add in terms of strengths and vulnerabilities, guys? Jordan?
Yeah, there's something that I see, and I do have Leo on my IC, so it's carrying in this kind of energy, and my Pluto also aspects my sun. So, and I've seen this with clients that there can be a vulnerability whenever one is coming in with a parent who doesn't understand who they are. But what ends up happening as they work through this dynamic of, I don't feel seen, I don't feel acknowledged for who I am. I know that I'm special, and it's not, oh, I'm different than everyone else in a negative way. It can really be like, I'm just as special as that person. Like, why can't I be acknowledged in this way? Something that's kind of like this hero's journey I find with some Leo moons or people who have a lot of Leo, is that they end up learning how to validate that within themselves. And so it turns into that self-love and that self-dignity. And they don't need that anymore from an external form. Because when we're looking at the moon, I feel like so much is sometimes childhood stuff, you know? And so I often see that with like a moon in the 5th or a Leo moon, that I see Leo is like coming in with possibly people or parents who just maybe don't understand your uniqueness or your specialness, you know? And so they want you to be someone that you're not. And so that hero's journey for that moon placement is really understanding that I can love myself and I don't need that from anyone else except for me. And there's something very empowering with that.
Yeah. I've just had an image of you know, you talk about a moon in Leo, just, you know, the parental expectations, putting that child on a like a pedestal, and maybe projecting their own kind of, oh, this is what is fun for me and joy for me, so I'll project it onto the child in a kind of vulnerable state, in a distorted sense. You know, and what you just mentioned there, yes, in terms of being able to come back to your own strength and what the child wants to do. A Leo moon, often I can also see as parents that are narcissistic rather than the individual themselves. So nurturing the environment that nurtured them, not being able to see essentially what their true essence is. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Any
I
strengths
want
and
to.
vulnerabilities?
I have an early childhood memory that came up. The party was always at my house. Like, whatever holiday was happening, people would pour in, and my dad was a musician, and inevitably after dinner, everyone would go into the living room and he'd start playing the piano for everybody. And it would always end up with him asking the twins, my sister and I, to sing for the guests. And I was horrified always and never wanted to do this because I have Virgo on the 4th house cusp, and my sister has Leo. And she loved to be the center of attention. I did not. It's just classic. I was just horrified that I had to stand up there in front of everybody. And it wasn't as cute with one person. It had to be the twins, right? So I had to be mortified and just feeling, like the last place I wanted to be in that moment. And usually I would slip away and she would stand there and keep singing. It was perfect. The Leo. So I would say in her case, this is a Leo 4th house cusp, like Jordan was talking about how that manifests in early childhood, is she loved it and she was adorable up there, and just she wanted it and she was good at it. So that's also true, that there's the feedback that the Leo moon, if they're getting the feedback from outside of themselves, it's like stoking the fire. It gives back. And I mean, also she loved it that it made other people happy. So, it was a win. Yes.
Yes. It's the need for the security, right? To
Yeah, that
validate
was
me so I feel secure. Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Anything else, guys? Nope. Perfect. So we can now move on to, I believe it's one of our example charts. And the first one we have is Tom Hanks, that we know is a very big American actor and filmmaker. And he's probably one of the most recognizable faces in the world. Like, been around for so many years. And, my favorite movies, and I was thinking of them, led back to Splash. I'm going to clearly age myself. Splash, The Money Pit, which I absolutely loved. It's one of the funniest films I've ever seen. Big as well. But yeah, an actor that's done a lot of diverse roles. And his natal moon is sitting in his 11th house in the sign of Leo. Who would like to start us off on Tom Hanks?
Yeah, from my understanding, what I do know about him, he's in the first stage individuated, or he's transitioning, I would say, from third stage consensus to first stage individuated. And the reason that I say that is because he did gravitate to mainstream religion for a time, but it seems that through his work, he's progressively breaking out, that he's also written short stories, and one of them is called, I believe it's The Uncommon Man. The uncommon person. And looking at that moon in Leo in the 11th, in terms of focusing on that symbol at first for a bit, to me it symbolizes a self-empowerment that's happening through through individuation or through deconditioning and moving into more of an individuated expression. And something he conveyed too, seeing that Pluto's in the 12th house in Leo, and Jupiter, which is the ruler of that North Node, being in Sag in a new phase. He's also talked about how his use of film or cinema, it was a way for him to emotionally work through feelings of loneliness. That for him, that was one of his big challenges, was always a feeling of feeling lonely or feeling alone, and that cinema was a way to really touch base with being able to convey what's universal, seeing that Pluto in the 12th house, um, and that Jupiter new phase to that Sag North node in the 3rd. It's like a new way of expressing that, or like a new way of conveying um, what feeling different can bring, or perhaps the joy of being able to embrace that, perhaps uh, for a new time, seeing that it's a new phase Jupiter. So from my understanding, I seeing that moon in Leo, it's like a way of expressing what's special, or what can come from departing from the known, or departing from what's conventional, and the joy of or playfulness of being able to, I would say that the versatility, he can put himself in these different spots, and no matter what role he plays, he can convey it in very honest and very authentic ways. For me, the movie also the movie Castaway, that scene with Wilson where he's alone on the island and the beach ball. So he creates one person he can talk to, and he's out in the waves, and then he loses the ball and he just falls to pieces. He's like, no, not Wilson, no. It's like, and then when he gets back, it's a total lifestyle change. He can't relate to how he was living. He can't relate to what he was doing, his profession, to how he'd live his life. It was a total transformer. And seeing a strength in that, or seeing how he's able to express the strength in embracing that, because when he went through that lifestyle change, um, it was like he was able to see how those things really didn't hold any joy. Or from what you guys were sharing, Kristin, what you were saying, how when you have Moon in Leo, you need to be in love with it, or it needs to really be something that feeds your heart and soul. And when he came back from being alone on that island, he was really seeing how empty his life was, and he wasn't able to touch base with that before that happened. So I can really see the strength in that, or in terms of how he's conveying these different messages, or these different roles, in ways that help us not feel so alone, or help
Yeah.
us feel that we're not, how we're feeling is understood.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that as well, David, because I only recently found out that he had a little bit of a difficult childhood, where he apparently moved around lived in 10 different homes by the time he was 10 years of age.
Oh, wow.
And in a recent interview, he actually mentioned that, and I'll quote this, he said that life is easier if you don't need anybody. So, and if you look at that 11th house, Moon in Leo, it's in the natural house of Aquarius, the 11th house. So that alienation, and he's had to, from his early childhood, be a little bit more detached, because he was forced to be detached. And you look at that moon is conjunct Uranus in Leo in the 11th house. So there's potentially some trauma from early childhood. And I feel one of the ways he's navigated through that is through his profession, Leo, the actor, and playing all these different characters, and maybe at times expressing his own trauma through the roles rather than having to express it as Tom Hanks. So hence he's a versatile actor, and he's able to do these amazing roles, and to this day, and like you mentioned, he's transitioning as an author. He's written some fiction books now as well. So all these different I want to say activities, but he's channeling this through different ways that to him bring him joy. Let's put it that way. It has to be fun for him to continue to act, to continue to do all that he's doing, because it's not like he needs the money anymore, right? Like, it's he's at a point where he's doing it because it's something that he wants to do rather than being forced to do it. And that 11th house moon in Leo would kind of just bring that objectivity to his life experience, I feel.
No, there's something that that stands out so much for me. It's his voice. His obviously he's familiar to everyone, his face, but you can hear his voice and you know it's him.
Yeah.
And anytime I see a prominent Capricorn signature, like a 10th house Mercury and Capricorn, it's that grounding, that's some sort of just energy it's something memorable, which is to me is Capricorn. And I find it fascinating that the moon is ruled by the sun in the 10th, which is also a Capricorn house in Cancer. So it's really relatable with Venus conjunct that Mercury, Venus in Gemini, the way he's speaking and communicating with Mercury in Cancer. You feel something when he's acting. You learn something also. And I mean, he's relatable, and he also plays a lot of unusual characters, like Forrest Gump. That movie was incredible. I mean, it was really, Forrest Gump was exhibiting behaviors that are aligned with symptoms in autism, but they weren't giving him a diagnosis in the film. But that's how he was appearing in the film. And his friend Bubba, the same, right? The big black guy, his friend. And so, no, that to me was another example of portraying what's possible, even for a soul who's got autism, like, all these exceptional feats that he was able to experience and show other people, not to judge, for certain conditions. So love that film too.
Yeah.
Kristin, you kind of hit on this. When I look at that Mercury in Cancer ruling that Venus retrograde in Gemini in the 10th, and then the moon being filtered into this, is he's played so many characters that, especially when I think of the films that he's made for children, Woody, or in Big, kind of even in Splash in some type of ways, and then you're even bringing up Forrest Gump. It's where it's expressing adults, especially adult men who have vulnerabilities, which I don't think that was really seen as often until he came along. So he's been able to do that for adults, and then he's also been able to mirror that in a very Leo-like way for children, that you can be an adult man and express your vulnerabilities. And that also kind of speaks to, Rob, what you're talking about with the trauma from childhood and maybe playing this out. But I feel like the way that he's acted when we're getting into a moon in Leo is the way that he's been nurturing himself is through, showing and expressing these vulnerabilities in a way that really wasn't seen before. It was more in an avant-garde kind of way for the time. I think of Woody and the trials and tribulations that Woody had to go through on Toy Story, and like how vulnerable he had to be, but he was a cowboy, and how that connected with kids. You were either Woody or you were Buzz. That's who you were picking, in the 90s was either one. And then I think of like even in Big, so it's kind of this common theme of being able to express vulnerabilities while being a man. That's that Cancer in the 10th, I feel like. So
Yeah. It's also, I just want to go back to what Kristin mentioned about his voice. I've just thought of Polar Express, as we head towards Christmas. I'll be watching that.
so good.
Yeah, right. Such a beautiful film, animation. But you're right, Kristin, close your eyes. You can actually hear his voice because it's so distinctive. And before we move on to our next chart, I just want to add
character, Rav. Did you know that?
Yeah. Yes,
every
yes.
character
I knew that
in
later.
that,
Yes.
the little kid, the Santa, the train conductor, he plays every single character. Look at his chart. It just really speaks to that diversification.
Yeah.
So sorry, I butted in.
No, no, no. I was just going to add the fact that his moon in Leo, because we have to remember when he first kind of became big, he had this image as the lover boy, right? He did all those romantic films, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail. So he kind of, in some actors back in the day, got stuck with that stereotype and were able to move on. I'm thinking of the Brat Pack from the 80s, some of them, not all of them. But he's been able to, you can't really put him in a certain category. He is that diverse. So he has that kind of, ability to be able to transform and do various roles. But no, yeah, he is somebody that's going to probably do even more as the years go on. But no, yeah, Joe, do you want to add anything? Are you a fan?
I'm totally a fan. Absolutely. He's one of the most relatable actors that I can think of. And he seems so ordinary, in the way he comes across. Thinking about this diversity, right, that he draws through his South Node. But he seems, I can't imagine, well, what I imagine is that I wouldn't be able to imagine a character that he wouldn't be able to play. It's just like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm a big fan. But he always is ordinary people in extraordinary situations, like the guy in Castaway. He seems to have started out as a fairly ordinary guy. He's on the plane and the drinks trolley flies down and everything falls apart. And then he suddenly finds himself out of the drama in this place of stillness on the island. And he's the ordinary guy in an extraordinary situation.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
think about the other really intense movies he's done, like The Green Mile. I mean, Saving Private Ryan. He's been in Sully with the plane crash. He's been in a lot of life and death kinds of movies also, not just the lighthearted, the love affair, the love story, or the romantic comedy, or
the
the
Apollo one.
fan big. But yeah, I mean, he's really just done it all.
I
He's done it
imagine,
Did you
all.
guys,
I
just
imagine
before we move on, go on, sorry, go on.
just thinking about state of evolutionary consciousness, that to someone looking around them who's operating from a more consensus kind of consciousness, then he would appear to be an ordinary person in extraordinary situations, starting to do his own thing. His Cassandra is up here in the 10th house too. I just noticed on the episode there that and the archetype of Cassandra is the ancient Greek goddess, lost her voice and only got it back if she spoke her truth. And he speaks to millions and millions of people. I think he comes across as an ordinary person that people relate to.
I
Oh my
agree.
gosh, I just remembered he was also in Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a fabulous movie.
Angels and Demons. Those are incredible. Those two movies. There was another one I was trying to remember. Shawshank Redemption, Philadelphia. Oh my gosh, the Philadelphia about the AIDS. There's like 100 films sitting here. They're almost all amazing.
Apparently, kids stop him in the elevator because they recognize his voice, but he doesn't look like Woody. And they say they have to close their eyes. And then they go, "You're Woody."
And look at this. He's got Pluto, Jupiter conjunct in the 12th house, and Jupiter rules the North Node and Sag in the third. There's another like restating. I mean, the world loves him. International fame with that 12th house Pluto and Jupiter right there with it. That's
I also think that Pluto Jupiter is how he's accessing the pure emotion that is like transcending to other people. Everyone feels it. No matter what role he plays, you can identify with him. And that's what makes him so great at his job,
Yeah, fantastic. Wonderful.
Absolutely. I was just going to mention one of my favorite films, Cloud Atlas. But I loved him in that. But yeah, so cool. Thank you guys. And we have another chart because we're going to talk about a different level of consciousness. So we mentioned that Tom Hanks is very likely just in the first stage, individuated or starting out. We have a spiritual master. We have Yogananda, whose chart we're going to look into now. And I want Kristin to start this off because I know you'll start it off beautifully.
Oh my goodness. Well, the story that kills me every time in the autobiography of a yogi is when it reaches a point where his mom, he's so close to his mother, so close. So he talks about her, it's just palpable, that love. And she leaves to help prepare for her, I think it's her son's wedding, right?
Son's wedding.
And what is the disease that's going on at that time? I want to say cholera, that's not right. Anyway, some disease going around. I think the cousin was sick and she literally perishes overnight, and he doesn't get to say goodbye to her yet. He has a dream that she's dying, and he's in a panic. He's telling his father, we've got to go see mother, she's dying. And he thought the dad thinks he's all making it all up. And so you see with that 12th house moon, and it is forming, I can't see this chart right here.
To
It
what
is not
planet?
a square. Huh?
Which planet are you looking at?
Looking at the square shown there, but I'm not, it's a square to the nodes, is it not? Oh, wait, what degree is that moon?
25.
25.
I know
25.
it's in conjunct, something. Well, I can't,
Alice.
there's so many trines actually. My eyes are getting bad, but I don't have the chart in front of me as clearly as I want it to. But what I wanted to say, I was just looking for the stress to that moon, because to lose your mother overnight without saying goodbye, there has to be a reason for that. So the why did he lose his mother? Ultimately, at that stage of evolution, we learn that it can get harder even as we evolve, because we're forced to remove our attachments, and especially with the moon in Leo, needing that love of the mother, the eternal love of that mother. And so I think he might have been 10, 11 years old when this happened. And here he would not leave the attic, demanding that she reveal herself to him. Moon Square series, thank you. That is so, wow, graphic.
Yes.
And so he says, I literally had pulled up this poem that he wrote after her passing, and it's called The Lost Two Black Eyes. And it's too long for me to read it all here, but essentially what he's learning is that he had to lose his earthly mother in order to access the heavenly mother. And what the heavenly mother ultimately showed him is that he was looking for his mother's eyes in the sea of black eyes in India, right, everywhere. And while there were many that wanted to nurture him and mother him, none were the diamond eyes of his mother's, that sparkled. And just his words are amazing in this poem. And so he ultimately does learn that he had to experience this loss in order to evolve, in order to emotionally evolve, to open his heart to the divine mother. And so the divine mother is telling him through that 12th house placement, you will always find your mother's eyes in my eyes. They've always been there. And so that just gives me the chills when I think about that. And just in terms of that, nothing ever really ends, or nothing really dies. And he says at the very end of the poem, in every form of a soulful woman and in my infinite cosmic form, she's essentially, the divine mother is telling him that every soulful woman can be found in my eyes, in my infinite cosmic form. So that was his lesson. And to learn how to not be dependent on the physical touch, the physical holding, and that way. So it's a heartbreaking story, but a big piece for his evolutionary journey.
Yeah. No, even in Autobiography Yogi, Kristin, and I'm sure you'll remember this, his mother had left him a note because she knew she was going to pass away, because she was given this message when he was a bit younger. And she had told the elder son to give him the letter a year after her passing, so not straight away. And
Yeah.
in the note, the mother had actually written, "Farewell, my child. The cosmic mother will protect you." You talk about the moon in the 12th house in Leo, that that Neptune, spirituality, 12th house. And just that knowing that coming into this incarnation, one of his biggest lessons, like you said, was detachment from anything physical in this realm. And even that moon, it's that, sorry, his sun in the 5th house, which is the natural house of Leo in Capricorn, very strong-willed character. Like, he went through a lot of challenges early on in life, where most people would break. But having that level of consciousness that he was born into, he needed that strong-willed nature to follow his divine purpose, divine mission, which was to connect not only to God for himself, but connect the world to God, to what God essentially is, and through moving to America and setting up the institutes and even writing Autobiography of a Yogi, which to this day is still one of the best-selling books in the world.
You know
So
what?
yeah,
Another
so
thing too is that every person, every soul that he was attached to and that he loved with his whole heart died when he was not present. A Yogeshwar, siblings, and I don't know, Deva, if you know the reason for that. I don't know if it's because he was spared that kind of suffering or if there was something else. I mean, Yogeshwar did reappear for him after he passed. In the book, it's talked about that experience that Yogananda has. But David, do you know why everyone he loved died when he was not with them? Oh,
David, you're on mute.
Because of his evolved state, the only thing I can offer is a quote which I've very found helpful. And he says that the human heart has to be broken in order to make room for the divine. So it's like a way of saying that for all that, that the loving with the whole, that if you love someone with the whole heart, that eventually that has to be taken away in order for the expansion into the divine to happen. So because of his evolved state, I wouldn't venture to say that that's why, but that quote has really helped me. And I can see that with the Leo moon in the 12th, bringing things to culmination
Right.
through not being present.
And not being able to say goodbye.
Mm.
I mean, what a heartbreaking thing. I mean,
Oh,
the mother piece was just too much, but to
Yeah.
all to the other souls that he really deeply loved, and it's
Yeah.
talked about throughout the book. But I don't know if it's harder
Kristin,
to.
could it be, this is just a thought, could it be that there's an inner knowing that it's not the end?
Oh,
Just
certainly.
that inner
Just
feeling of,
being able to reach
yeah,
them in the ethereal plane, or being able to then find them that way using his capacity and evolving to a place where he can actually have that connection when they're out of the form. But
yeah.
I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like with the moon in Leo and the 12th, it's almost like it's like water slipping through your fingers. Like you can't hold on to anything. Nothing is real. Everything is Maya. That's what he talks a lot about. Everything is just a fantasy where we're all actors on this big stage. Nothing is real.
Yeah.
And there's a giant poem about Maya in the autobiography as well. And I mean, that reflects that with that moon in the 12th house.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add any insights to Yogananda's chart when it's especially linked to the moon in Leo in the 12th house?
I'd say his work with children and how that brought him a lot of joy to see others. That best part of Leo, absolutely that best part of Leo is there's no greater joy than seeing other people self-actualize. And his work with children, he was really able um to nurture them, seeing that Venus in the Sagittarius in the 4th too, and Mercury there trining that moon, through empowering them in emotionally speaking, whether it was through meditations or walks in nature or alternative forms of education that were outside the norm. It really spoke to me to really touching base with how they were put together and really shining a light on them so they felt empowered to become who they could be and what they're made of. And always from what was described of the children and families that he touched, it was just this quiet affirmation that they can do. Always this silent supporter. And
Yeah.
oh, and never imposing what he thought they should be. And to me, that was really the most inspiring, is that it was, no, you're designed how you're designed, and full throttle on that.
Yeah. letting them be with their innocence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
beautiful.
Well, he did start a
Yeah.
school for children, for young boys, right?
Right.
Hey,
Lovely.
Alright.
Kristin,
Amazing.
before we
Yeah.
move on, one thing I'm thinking, I'm kind of going back and thinking about not being able to say goodbye. I feel like that's that Uranus in the third, and it's in conjunct that Pluto, Neptune retrograde in Gemini. So
Yeah.
like reliving these experiences too. I mean, even at that stage of evolution, it is getting you back into that. Everything amounts to pure emotion. So having to possibly re-experience these dynamics to understand the ultimate, right?
Yeah, that it's like a disconnect. Uranus in conjunct Pluto and Neptune. It's almost like the shock, and then it's gone, and it does re-traumatize through the news, through the third house news that someone
Yeah.
has passed over and over. And then there's this gap of separation that he's having to bridge the gap through energetically, vibrationally, to try and reach them.
Yeah.
His mother, Yukashwar, sister, others. There's other friends he had that passed in the same way. Even knowing they were sick, I think he even was trying to stay back, thinking or knowing that Yukashwar might leave his form. I can't remember exactly how that played out, but having regret that he didn't stay longer, or something happening, of course.
Yeah.
But I think in a way, he's such a childlike soul. Like, I think subconsciously he didn't want to be there when it happened either. There was this kind of, I do feel like it was God's way of sparing him that pain, to watch
Yeah.
someone suffer and that way. That's just my personal interpretation of that.
That's
Yeah, and
beautiful.
I definitely think it was teaching him how to express the message in a different way, that the message goes beyond even after someone's left, you know?
Yeah.
And too,
Yeah.
it makes me think of that story with the deer, how there was
Oh,
a deer that was overfed just through miscommunication, and he was trying to save the deer, and then the deer appeared in his dream, and he said, "You're holding me back. I need to evolve to another form, and you need to let me go." And he did. He went, "Oh my God," so he let go of trying to save the deer. He said, "It's time for it to pass, and I'll release you." It's
Oh,
in
bless.
term.
He was trying to help.
He was trying, and I can totally, not to project myself, but I could totally see being in situations where you're with someone you love and you want to save them, you want them to stay, and you end up interfering with their natural time. But yeah, I mean, with the moon and the 12th being spared, that absolutely. But that story came to mind in terms of knowing when to let go and letting things happen in their natural course. And that,
Yeah. That reminds me of his Chiron sextile, that south node, and trine that north node too. Like learning how,
Yeah.
through changing his awareness around those old wounds of trying to be in service and like, I didn't do this right and I need to go do this. And then having to realize that you have to surrender,
Yes. Joys of being human.
right?
Yeah. Right. On that note, we will head to the next chart, which is the full moon, which is coming up on the 15th of December. And it's going to be at 23 degrees of Gemini. And Jordan, will you start us off on this one? And then we will add in with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that I'm seeing this is a few different ways. There's a lot going on in this chart. You've got Lilith squaring the nodes, you've got that Pluto series conjunction happening during this. And that moon is falling in the 6th house and ruled by that Mercury in Sag in the 11th, which is actually stationing. I don't know why in this chart it doesn't show that, but it's stationing at this time. And to me, that's like where we're needing to really improve upon. So much of this is the information that we're taking in and really improving upon what is a truth versus an opinion, or the need to, if I have a conversation with someone, am I gonna have to get all the facts right before I say the thing that I need to say? And can I say it as perfect as I can? And it's really about letting go of if there's limiting beliefs around that and just being authentic and speaking one's truth around that. That moon is moving into a square with the nodes as well. And, you know, whenever we look at that Mars retrograde in Leo, if we speak from the heart and we speak authentically, you know, we can't go wrong. Also, I think that Venus trining that South Node in Libra can really help us bring up these dynamics within relationships, and Mars being a trigger of it, of where maybe we're holding on and we need to release. And maybe that comes through the form of a conversation. And, you know, there's always that dynamic. I think sometimes when people are afraid to share a message or to say what it is that they need to say, they want to make sure that they get everything right. I'm going to say it in the most perfect way so I can be understood, right? And there can be lessons during this full moon that people are going to do what they want to do with whatever it is that you have to say. And this is the way that I'm looking at this in a more kind of personal way. And if I was looking at this in a more broader collective way, I'm looking at it in the sense of that series on Pluto. There's been a lot of loss, you know, with community and the divisions that we've had, you know, with that Pluto series, trying that South Node and really needing to recover this sense of community through not over-identifying with the past, but using that Lilith square the nodes to reflect in order to move forward and to discern correct judgment in these areas of, you know, how can we bring unity and diversity, especially with that moon in Gemini. But there's a plethora of ways that I see this. So yeah.
Well, I was Kristin, I was listening to your monthly series with Rose, and you explained something about the Grand Trine. I was listening to it this morning, and you just explained it beautifully about the Grand Trine between Mars retrograde and Mercury, I believe, and the North Node of the Moon. I just want you to share with the audience because you just articulated it beautifully, and I don't want to butcher it.
Said that was so long ago, but you can just tell them, what did I say? And then I'll try and.
It was literally how this full moon is moving us forwards. Though it's a full moon is to do accumulation, it's like setting the scene for the future. You've got, you know, the Grand Trine between Mercury retrograde, because Mercury actually on the same day stations direct. Yeah, so stations direct. So it's emphasizing Mercury, especially as the ruler of the moon.
Right.
And that Grand Trine with Mars retrograde, and then the North Node of the Moon in Aries, the ruler being Mars. So it's sort of like heightening us about the way forward, especially in terms of the desires or the action that we're going to do and what's coming up for us at this time, especially in
Well,
our
I think,
thoughts.
I heard exactly what I said. I don't remember, but it's ringing a bell now that you're saying that. And we've got Mercury stationary direct on that day. That is so powerful all on its own to have that happening on the day of a full moon, which is something's coming to a head in our relationships. Anything that's been brushed under the rug is also part of this. I agree with you, Jordan. We can't be at war with our differences in the world right now. We can't just, it's never gonna, Yogananda says, anger blots out God. I mean, we're never going to be able to find peace and resolution if we're at battle and constant war with one another. We have to find a place to meet. But in terms of our own personal desires and that are linked with our evolution, I mean, Mars retrograde slowing down is heating us up on the inside. Everything is becoming very focused and concentrated. We're really getting in touch with our passions and what drives us, what moves us. And as Mars is a yang archetype and it inverts, it becomes yin. And so the ego is pointing back to the soul. The ego, your ego is literally pointing to your soul right now and just hunkering down. And as Mercury moves direct, we're going to have more ideas, conversations, and thoughts around how to support these desires that we want for ourselves moving forward. We just can't be in a hurry. The direction is what matters. As I mentioned before in another podcast, not the speed. It's not about speed right now. It's about direction. And it will take us some time to find the specifics around that direction. but allow yourself to receive whatever energy is there and the emotion around it, that whether you need to talk about it, explore something, this is the time to come back to something that you started and stopped, whether it's a conversation or a project, a creative endeavor, and just slow it down and open up your heart chakra this time and allow those insights and signposts to reveal themselves. I do feel like it's an incredible time, an incredible period of transition for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Agreed.
Thank you. Yes. David, Joe, anything to add? Do you see anything that we maybe not just we spoke about? I was just looking at, for me, it's just the whole, it actually sits on my IC and midhaven exactly. So it's interesting. So if any in the audience, if you just mark these points in your natal birth chart, you'll see where the energies are playing out. And it's fascinating to see what's happening in your own life, especially once Mercury is going sorry,
I
post
want to say one
retrograde.
more thing, Rob. One more thing. This
Yeah.
is so important. We're evolutionary astrologers, and Pluto is forming really gorgeous angles to the nodes. And so
Yeah.
that's about trusting yourself with what you want. And don't even overthink it. Your instinct is going to be very clear with you. That's what you want, what you desire is coming from your soul. And so with Pluto in such a beautiful position to the nodes, it literally can be like finding your lane in life, finding your own lane, and, you know, driving. It just can feel that seamless. So it's just don't fight it. Don't force it and don't fight it. Just let it happen.
I was going to say let it flow, but yeah, that's exactly
Like that.
that's exactly
Let it
right.
flow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like with like Venus ruling that south node and Uranus, it's very much like the nodes are about to shift. This is one of our last full moons before that happens. And it's like all of this work we've been doing over 18 months, right? And now we have the rulers of the nodes that have been, you know, opposing themselves this week. It's like, it's trying to finish up that final business of like, there could be a trigger. And then it's like, are you going to stand in who you are now? That's the real transformation, right? Like all the work you've been doing, are you going to just be yourself? And I definitely feel like that's a lot of this going on. And then Pluto, you know, trining that south node and sextile the north node. How are you going to love on yourself? How are you going to feel love within yourself? How are you going to show up in the world authentically now that maybe you feel a little bit brand new after this whole cycle, you know? So.
Perfect. Thank you, Jordan, for that. And just moving on, we have a beautiful quote from Yogananda himself. I was going to say Sue, I haven't memorized it. So he said, there is a magnet in your heart that will attract true friends. That magnet is unselfishness, thinking of others first. When you learn to live for others, they will live for you. That's such a beautiful quote to end today's Leo moon archetype at. And before we do close, just to let you know that this whole series is based on Deva's wonderful book, The Moon and Its Nodes in Evolutionary Astrology. So please do check that out if any of this resonates and you just want to know more about the moon, your natal moon in the chart, and even the nodes of the moon. And anyone that's interested in Jeffrey Wolfrien's School of Evolutionary Astrology, there's a website that you can check everything out on in terms of the course, any information, articles and books, etc. So do check out that website. And thank you,
I have
everyone, for
something.
joining. Yes, tell me.
Yeah, I do want us to say that on the jwgaea.org website, the message board, you know, I wanted to just put it out there that if there's someone who's wanting to go deeper into their study and there's an area within EA that you're wanting to talk about, you know, Kristin, myself, Rob, Deva, Joe, we would be happy to answer your questions and really do a deep dive with you. We love interacting with people on that message board. We love all things EA, and it's a great time because Pluto's in Aquarius. Venus is there. It's about community. We're talking about Leo, it's about love and a love for this work. And so I just wanted to put that out there for anyone within our astrology community, that if there's something you want to talk about, you know, don't
Let us
hesitate.
know.
There is no wrong question. I am like a product of that.
That is true. No, yeah, so Sue will add the link to that that website on the I forgot what you call it, the bio. So please do check that out, and we'll connect back with you next month for the Virgo archetype. So thank you for listening, guys.
You.
Lots of love. Much love, everyone.
Happy holidays.